Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Nora Muhammad. I'm glad to be back with you for another episode, and this episode is kind of a part two to episode 217, last week's episode. And if you did not listen to that one, I encourage you to go back and listen. But I will say that if you haven't, there was no cliffhangers that were left, so you can listen to this one and then go back and listen to 217. But in that episode, in this episode, I'm talking about the importance of fathers in the lives of our children. It's something that we cannot highlight enough. It's something that our modern culture certainly downplays the importance and the role of not just fathers, but just men in general. Masculinity and maleness, it's certainly been demonized, I'd say, over the last couple years, 3 years. Conversations about toxic masculinity, which we've talked about on this podcast, and just the way that Black men specifically are demonized in modern culture, as if they just don't have value or significance, or like they don't make meaningful contributions. I mean, to me, Black men are like those the people in the classroom. If you remember back to being in elementary school, you remember that one child that was just always getting in trouble, and even if that child didn't do anything, if there was a noise, someone made a noise, and the teacher just assumed it's coming from this bad kid. That's kind of how I see modern culture treats Black men. Black men are just always the target. And it's unfair. It's unfair to them. It's unfair to our families. It's unfair to our children. And so I shared some stats in the last episode from the Center for Disease Control. If you didn't listen, I'll share them now. 90% of all homeless and runaway youth are from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts are from fatherless homes. And 63% of youth suicides are with children or youth from fatherless homes. So, the need for our men to be in our homes as, their children are being raised, it's just so important. And so I'm going to continue that conversation. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the quality of time versus the quantity of time. I'm going to talk about a child's confidence, curious, and empathetic qualities and traits. I'm going to talk about the identity and manhood in boys, and also mental health and esteem in girls, and how the role of a father and the presence of a father impacts all of them. Now, first, I'll just share some research. Research has shown that children who are raised in homes with fathers who are involved, they have stronger cognitive and motor skills. They have elevated physical and mental health. They become better problem solvers. They're more confident, curious, and empathetic. But let's just talk about the quality of time versus the quantity of time. And what I'm sharing with you right now specifically is based on research, that the quality of the father and child relationship, it matters more than the amount of hours spent together. And just because a father is not living in residence with the child, they can still yet have a positive effect on that child's social and emotional well-being and the child's academic achievement and behavioral adjustment. So just because a father may not spend as much time with the child as the mother, we can't say that father's when the father is present, because he's present less, that there's less value to it. That is not true. Fathers, some fathers just may work a lot. Some fathers may work 1.5 or 2 jobs, and these fathers may miss the baseball games. They may miss the track meets. They may be, in the military and be away from their children. However, the quality of the time that they spend together matters more than the specific hours spent together. So let's remember that. Also, in talking about the confidence and the curiosity and the empathy that a child has, the level of the child's father and the involvement, rather, that is correlated with higher levels of sociability, confidence, curiosity, empathy, and self-control in children. They're less likely to act out in school. They're less likely to engage in risky behaviors during adolescence when there is a father actively involved with that child. In talking about identity and manhood in boys, fathers reduce, when there's a father present, the behavioral problems that a boy has is significantly reduced, and the child is less likely to engage in delinquency. And I'm talking about gender specific. I'm specifically talking about boys here. When a boy has his father present to model, he is learning from his father what his concept of a man is. His father is his first standard of masculinity in his life. He's the one. A father is the one that is the man that has the most long-lasting impact in a child's life, because he's there and he belongs to the father. Now, I know that boys have coaches, and coaches are so important, and sometimes teachers are so important, but it's that father that child is getting his identity from. And so something else that boys learn from their fathers is how to treat a woman, right? When they're growing up, children kind of emulate what they see their fathers doing. Boys see their fathers doing in a marriage. And so boys tend to, because you figure, okay, so how do I do this marriage thing, right? If you have not seen it, then you're kind of just trying to figure things out. But if a boy has a father present, then he's learning from his father his role in the marriage, in the relationship, his role as a father, and how fathers address children and address the needs of children, deal with behavioral issues in children, support children, celebrate children, counsel and console children. Boys get to see their fathers doing this, and they're learning from that how they can be men. And so it's important that fathers are there so that our boys can have a model and can have a healthy model. Because the thing that we must know is that boys are looking for someone to model. And so if the father is not there, that doesn't mean that the boy isn't going to look. And if the boy is looking outside of the home, sometimes the wrong influence is waiting for them, and is waiting to take them into a life that is dangerous, a life that is not beneficial or positive. So to have the child's father, to have the boy's father already there to be that man to model and emulate is so, so important in that boy developing a healthy and confident development into manhood. And that's necessary. And that's not something that we should take lightly or not give consideration to. How that boy is able to watch. I mean, listen, one of my sons is in an apprenticeship, a trades apprenticeship, right? So to be an apprentice, that means you're learning from someone, right? Whatever that trade is, whether it's electrician or carpenter or a plumber, right? Whatever that trade is, auto mechanic, you're learning from someone. And so we can consider it as a boy is the father's apprentice into manhood. And it's very, very important. Now, regarding fatherhood and the presence of a father as it relates to the mental health and esteem in girls, my goodness, we see so many of our young women just going wayward and losing themselves. And if we do an analysis, we'll see that unfortunately they don't have fathers present in the home. And so the research is telling us that father engagement reduces the psychological problems and the rates of depression in young women. Daughters who think that their fathers care a lot about them, daughters who feel connected to their fathers, they have fewer suicide attempts. They have fewer instances of body dissatisfaction, depression, low self-esteem, and substance abuse. Girls with fathers who are involved are twice as likely to stay in school. A girl's self-esteem is best predicted by her father's attention and positive affection. Girls who have a father figure and have a father in the home feel more protected. They're more likely to attend colleges. They're less likely to drop out of colleges. Girls who have fathers have better verbal skills. They have higher intellectual functioning. I think that's important. Girls who are living with their mothers and their fathers, as opposed to just living in a single mother-led home, they have fewer growth and developmental delays. They have fewer learning disorders, less emotional disabilities, and fewer behavior problems. Girls who live with their mothers only are more likely to have behavioral problems, more likely to have growth and developmental delays, more likely to have a learning disorder. And girls who live with their mothers only have a significantly more challenged ability to exhibit impulse control. They have a more challenged ability to delay gratification, and they have a weaker sense of what's right, of what's wrong, just that consciousness, just that self-accusing spirit. So when girls don't have a father in their life, when children don't have an actively involved father in their life, like all of the good statistics that I shared, right? Girls who have fathers have higher self-esteem. Girls who have fathers present are twice as likely to stay in school. Let's talk about that in the reverse. Girls who don't have fathers in their life are less likely to have self-esteem problems. They're more likely to leave school, high school or college, right? They're more likely to have a teen pregnancy. So fathers are important. And I would encourage everybody who's listening to understand that a child is made of two people, a man and a woman. And when we aren't fighting to ensure that that child has what he or she needs, if a child isn't consuming the right nutrition every day, then that child is going to have a deficiency. If that child is not drinking enough water every day, that child is going to be dehydrated, right? If that child is not in a appropriate shelter, then that child is vulnerable to the elements. So the child is also vulnerable when they don't have the shelter and stability of their fathers present in the home. So let us not be those ones that continue with the modern trend, which is not a new trend, of demoralizing our children by removing or keeping the fathers away from these young people who need them to develop and to have the best chance of developing into whole, healthy, and happy adults. As I said in the last episode, let's remember the outcome. Let's remember what we want for our children in their present and in their future. We want our children to be confident. We want our children to feel secure, to feel that they have the backing of this man who loves them, and that they need this man and they need his protection. They need his strength. And we should always, as mothers, the same way fathers should always put a good word to their children about their mothers should always put a good word about fathers to their children, because that is helping to fashion their own personal identity. I hope what I have shared in these 2 episodes have resonated with you. Maybe it's given you something to think about and consider in a way that is just not being presented mainstream. Everything in media, it seems, is in some way suggesting to us or creating hardship, is maybe I should say it that way, creating strife or promoting strife between men and women, specifically black men and black women. And we don't want to be purveyors of that. We don't want to consume all of that and then exhibit that in our own personal relationships. And we have generations who are coming up who are not raised by men, who did not have their father in their home or very active in their lives. And we should not continue with that trend. I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property. And to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. What I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, norahmuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@norahspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nora Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nora Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.